Hey guys, welcome back to Homestead Prepping and Survival. Today I drew this thing out on solar power. So I want to go over the basics, and I mean really simple basics on how solar power actually works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk basically while I'm looking at the board and pointing out to what's going on. And I'm going to step away for a second so that those of you that are really interested, and I apologize, I know my reloader is blocking part of it, but I'm going to step back, I'm going to hush for a second, and I'm going to let those of you that want to pause the video so you can screenshot this if you're interested, that kind of thing. But go ahead now if that's what you want to do. I've tried to make it as simple and basic as possible. All right, so the way solar power works is you've got sunshine coming from here and shining directly on your solar panels. Now, the better you have the solar panel aimed at the sun, wherever the sun may be in the day, the better that panel is going to produce power. So you can permanently mount them, like I have them permanently mounted on my roof of my house, but you can mount them on a system that will allow you to track the sun, go out and move it to where you get more output from your panels. The options are out there, but it does cost more money. So you start with your solar panels, and in my case, I'm using 12 volt panels. Most people use 24, 48 volt panels, and to be honest, as far as bigger, more permanent systems, you probably would be better off with that, according to what the experts say. I happen to like my 12 volt system. I just have to produce more power in order to be able to do the same thing, okay? But, so the sunshine heats up that solar cell in that panel, and that panel, that cell, turns that sunshine or that heat into DC voltage. And it goes from that panel out, and they tie together. So it'll go from your solar panels into your charge controller. Now, your charge controller is going to, kind of like your alternator does on your automobile. When your battery in your automobile needs power to be fully charged, that alternator regulator kicks in and tells it to charge while the engine's running. And then when it doesn't need any more, that alternator will reduce back to almost nothing or just what the vehicle's using. So you're not really building the battery up any more than it needs to. Well, your charge controller does that same thing that your alternator does. It makes sure that your panels don't just dump more energy into your batteries than what they can hold. So you go from your solar panel into your charge controller, and then from there into your batteries. So what your battery does is it stores the energy that the solar panel has just sent down to it. So in this case, these batteries are about 255 amp hours each, times 4 batteries gives you 1,020 watts of, or amp hours of power. So if you have 1,020 amp hours of power stored into those batteries, when you need that power, it leaves those batteries that are tied together, sometimes series for 24, 48 volt, and sometimes if it's 12 volt battery, then you're going to go parallel, and so on. So it leaves the batteries and it goes into your inverter. And what that inverter does, and it's be very specific when you're looking for it. It's not a converter. It's an inverter. Inverter takes DC voltage and turns it into AC voltage or regular household current. If you get a large enough inverter, it'll produce 240 volts pure sine wave that you can run your entire house on or your larger appliances. But all of them will produce 120 volts. And those are much cheaper. If you've got one that only does 120, you have to plug things in and so on. But your inverter takes that stored battery power, turns it into the electricity that you can use in your house or on your property. And you can plug in all your regular lights and your appliances, all of those things that take 120 volts. And then if you've got one that'll produce 240 volts, you can also connect things like your water well, some of your larger water heaters, things like that. It's going to take one heck of a massive inverter to produce power for an electric stove. I'm just telling you that's very, very likely not going to be the case. It's few and far between if you can even find one that'll produce that much power. And they consume so much energy, it's going to deplete your battery bank very fast by doing that. That is one of the reasons why I went from an electric stove when I built this house and put in a gas stove, so I don't have to produce that power. That's also one of the reasons that I put a 120 volt water heater in this house. And I don't have to produce the 240 volts it takes for most people's water heaters in order to get hot water. So if you do things, the right way to reduce the amount of amperage and power you need, you can produce what you need. But most people say, well, how much solar do I need? Well, your solar needs are based on how much power you are consuming. So it's expensive to do solar power. So the best way to do it, and I tell everyone this that ever asks me, the best way to determine how much solar power you need is to see where you can cut how much power required for your use. So if you went with a gas stove instead of electric, that's a lot of power you don't need. If you have a gas dryer instead of electric dryer, it's still going to have a 120 volt motor to turn it, but the heat comes from gas. So you're going to save a whole lot of power that way. If you think about, okay, what can I do to require less energy needed to run my house, and work your way backwards to what it's going to take to produce that power, you can have a much smaller system. Although it's not going to be tiny, you can still have a smaller system because your requirements are much lower. And that's the best way to start for the person that's interested in getting started. So what I wrote out here, so if you've got 1,020 amp hours stored into your battery bank, you can only, all right, if you divide that, say my house, I can actually run this whole property on a 40 amp breaker, but most of the time a 30. So if you took that 1,020 amp hours and divide it by 30 amps, that gives me 34 hours of total stored energy into those batteries. So you cannot use 100% of the battery stored power. You can't get the battery 100% dead because you're going to damage the battery. The best batteries are only going to let you get down to about, or say what I've found, about 60% of their capacity. So you've got 40% left in the battery when you have to recharge them, or you're going to damage the battery. So if you took that 60% usage, equals about 20 hours of usable energy at 30 amps of use per hour. I'll be right back, guys. Hang on. All right, guys, I apologize. I had a phone call. Most of you that know me know I do heating and air conditioning and heating and refrigeration. I've actually got a tech out tonight working on a walk-in freezer for someone, and that's what I did before I got into the office as far as dispatch. So I try to walk them through problems and help them get things going. I apologize, but you probably won't even notice it. I'll more than likely cut all that out. But anyway, so if you take out 60% of the amount of power that you had stored, then you've only got about 20 hours of usable energy stored into the batteries. So if you go, okay, well, I need longer runtime than 20 hours. Well, if you had pretty sunshiny days every single day, no, that's plenty, because you're getting more daylight every day to charge that bank back up before your 20 hours of power is consumed. But no one has that unless you're in Alaska and it never clouds or rains. You know what I'm saying? So you can't. So if you need more power, that means the more batteries you have, the more power you can use. So if you went from 4 batteries to 8 batteries, you would go from 1,020 watt hours of usable power, or amp hours, to 2040 amp hours of usable power. And then you go, okay, well, that means if I'm still only pulling 30 amps at 2040 hours of usable power, I'm only getting about 60% of that. That's going to give me 40 hours of usable power, right? So, okay, 40 hours sounds great. The problem is when you add that many more batteries, you've got to have more solar panels to get them charged in one day. Because if you use more than half of what the battery's available to you, if you use more than that and your panels can't recharge it, reproduce that same power in one day, after several days, you're eventually going to deplete the batteries and not have enough power to recharge your system. That is why, that's actually what I wrote on the board, but that does not include fuse links, wire, all your safety features, etc. Okay? But that is why most people that have solar power try to tie that in with wind power. Because wind power can, even though you may not be in a prime windy area like this, you know, the shore by the oceans and lakes that get a breeze all the time, when it's cloudy and storms are coming in, you get wind, which means you're not getting much power out of your solar panels, but your wind turbine can make up for some of that charging that you need for your battery bank. So a wind turbine tied in with solar panels can help you get charged even when the sun's out. And think about it, the wind blows at night. I know that sounds crazy, but people don't think about those things. So you can get charged at night as well when the wind blows to help keep your battery bank storage up to where it needs to be. So it's really not that complicated. This is basically the system that I have here at on my homestead. Now I do have 10 panels. I've got 4 charge controllers. I've got 5 of these 255 amp hour batteries. That's a lot, and I actually want 2 to 4 more. But down the road, you know, take baby steps, get there one step at a time. And then I've got a couple of inverters that can supply all my 120 volt power, but I actually want to get to where I can have one that will produce my 240 volt needs, which is my well and, you know, like a few smaller things. My hot water heater is 120 volt. I'm planning on changing my dryer to gas. It's not yet, but I don't have to have a dryer if crap hit the fan. You can hang them out like we did years ago on a clothesline. So washing machines actually take a lot of amperage when that motor's working. So that's a tough one to produce as well. So you just gotta think along those lines. Start knocking off the highest energy hogs that are in your system so that you can reduce the amount of power you need and therefore have a much smaller system to do what you need it to do. My goal as a prepper is to be able to live as comfortably as I can, or as closely as I can to the way I do today before crap hit the fan. So if that helped you anyway, as far as drawing this out and kind of basically explaining how things work, I'm glad it did. Guys, hit the like button for me. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And, you know, please share the channel when you can. Help me grow this channel. Thank you to the people that have already subscribed. I think last time I looked earlier today, I'm up to 48 subscribers, which to me is awesome because, you know, my channel's, less than 2 months old. I thank y'all very much from the bottom of my heart. It means a lot. So anyway, guys, I appreciate it. If I can help y'all answer any questions, feel free to go to the About Me section on my YouTube channel, and it'll give you my email and all that stuff. And, you know, you have to hit the captcha to show you're not a robot, and etc. But if I can answer questions or help you with anything, I'm here. Just let me know. I try to respond to every comment that I can or that requires a response. And, guys, remember the 2 things I always tell you. Jesus loves you, and so do I. Y'all be safe.